Deep Dive.
Today, we're diving into something deep-rooted in the Horn of Africa.
When you look at Ethiopia's geography, its landlocked status just well, it feels off, doesn't it?
It really does.
Especially when you realize this isn't some natural quirk, but a direct consequence of colonial treaties. We're talking Italy, 1889 and 1908.
Right, agreements made right after Italy's defeat at Adwa, strangely enough. But they still cemented Ethiopia's lack of access to key ports, like Massawa and Assab.
It seems like a historical injustice with very real ongoing consequences.
Exactly. And the core point is that this lack of Red Sea access stems directly from these colonial-era deals. That power imbalance then continues to echo now.
So our mission today in this deep dive is to unpack the arguments legal, strategic for why Ethiopia might reconsider these treaties now, especially with everything happening in the region.
Precisely. It's about looking at the historical context through the lens of international law and current events.
Okay, so let's dive into the legal side first. Treaties aren't set in stone forever, are they? There must be ways to address agreements made under, well, unfair circumstances.
Absolutely not. International law, specifically the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, gives us a framework. And Article 52 is really key here.
Article 52, okay.
Yeah.
What does that say?
It basically states that a treaty is void and valid if it was concluded because of the threat or use of force.
Ah, so coercion.
Yes. And when you think about the pressure on Emperor Menelik II, back when the 1889 Treaty of Wuchal and the later 1908 deal were signed, I mean, the power difference with Italy was immense.
So you could argue he was negotiating under duress.
Yeah.
That the treaties themselves are potentially void from the start.
That's a strong argument, yes. The legitimacy is certainly questionable under Article 52.
Right. But here's something I find interesting. If the legal basis was shaky, why didn't subsequent Ethiopian governments, like, say, the TPLF-led administration, really make a big push to revisit this?
That's a fair question. And it's complicated. Look, sometimes immediate political realities, regional stability concerns, or other domestic priorities just take over.
So maybe the timing wasn't right or the political will wasn't focused there.
Possibly. Or maybe the perceived cost of challenging long-standing agreements seemed too high at the time. But, circumstances change. Okay, let's pivot to Eritrea. They inherit these borders at independence. How do they fit into the current friction?
Well, Eritrea, upon independence, inherited the borders defined by those same colonial-era treaties. So the existing arrangement, benefits them in terms of coastline.
But there's more recent stuff happening, provocations.
Yes, and this is critical. There have been actions by the Eritrean government recently that are widely seen as, let's say, provocative, destabilizing, particularly along Ethiopia's southern border.
And this is where another part of the Vienna Convention comes in, Article 60.
Precisely. Article 60 deals with what's called a material breach of a treaty.
Meaning?
Meaning if one party does something that fundamentally undermines the whole point of the treaty, the other party might have grounds to suspend it or even terminate it entirely.
So the argument could be that continued Eritrean hostility constitutes such a breach.
That's the potential argument, yes. If these actions are seen as fundamentally violating the basis of the relationship defined by those historical agreements, Ethiopia could legally justify withdrawing from them.
Which would throw the whole Red Sea access question wide open again.
It could. If Ethiopia were to declare the 1908 treaty, and by extension its predecessor, null and void based on a breach, or the original duress argument, it opens the door, renegotiating sea access, maybe even questioning the colonial-drawn borders themselves. It would be a major regional shift.
But Ethiopia's official line, it seems, is more focused on diplomacy, not immediate nullification or force.
That's what's being emphasized. Despite having, considerable military capability, the stated preference is international law, regional dialogue.
Calls for regional wisdom, finding cooperative solutions.
Right. The idea seems to be that cooperation benefits everyone more than conflict. But the legal groundwork based on historical documents and international law principles, it's there.
And Eritrea's current actions might be strengthening Ethiopia's hand on that front.
It could certainly be interpreted that way. Continued hostility might provide the legal justification Ethiopia perhaps lacked or didn't pursue before. It's a clear warning sign, really.
So the key takeaway seems to be Eritrea's actions could, ironically, give Ethiopia the legal leverage to finally undo these colonial-era restrictions on its Red Sea access.
That sums it up well. It shows how present-day actions can intersect with historical grievances and international law to potentially reshape borders and relationships set long ago. It puts the onus on Eritrea, suggesting continued aggression could unravel the very treaties that guarantee its current coastline relative to Ethiopia.
Okay, a final thought then for you listening. When we look at this long shadow of colonialism, what does it mean more broadly if a nation starts successfully revisiting treaties signed under duress?
Yeah, what precedent could that set?
How might that ripple out to other historical border disputes, legacies of empire all around the world? Something to think about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.